Well, here we are again. It's Sunday, March 9th, 2025, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Champaign, Illinois. We've just had daylight savings time, so hopefully the rest of you have managed to figure out how to do that and are here on time. Today we're reading the fourth letter in a Dear Holmes series called The Problem at Hazlewood Grange. This is an older case. And this will be the last letter of clues we get. This was back in the day when Dear Holmes did 4 clue letters and then 1 solution. They've since moved to 3 bigger clue letters. It has been a very interesting case. I'm not going to do a big recap, so if you haven't watched the previous 3 sessions, you shouldn't be here for this. It will make no sense. But this will be the last letter before we get the solution from Sherlock Holmes, our last opportunity to come up with theories. Let's check in with the chat, see how everyone's doing, make sure that I am actually live. YouTube says 13 viewers. We won't do a recap, but I think we should look at the last letter and remind ourselves what's new, what new information we got. I think I have a fairly good handle on this case in terms of what basically happened. I do think this is an inside staged robbery for insurance money that's gone wrong. What we're not sure about is sort of the details on the edges, who exactly was involved, what was their role, how to explain the footprints and barrel mark. That's the part we don't quite understand. There's still a little bit of debate about how our victim died. I have a theory. We'll find out if it's right soon. How is everyone doing? How's everyone enjoying their weekend? Let me do a little bookkeeping before we get started here. Yesterday, last 2 days, we've been playing a cold case dossier game called Unsolved Case Files, the case of Sandra Ivy, wrapping up our little science fiction mini marathon. And it took us 2 days because we got stuck, but it turned out to be a very enjoyable case. Surprising, because I have played one of the Unsolved Case Files before. There are like 8 or 9 of them. They're marketed pretty heavily on Amazon. And I sort of wrote them off. I wrote them off as a well-produced, lightweight, easy game. And yesterday, I found out that they've actually got some tricks up their sleeve and a much fuller experience, surprisingly good. And thanks to the Patreon supporters of this channel, I just went ahead and clicked purchase and bought all of the other Unsolved Case File games that we haven't played yet, so those will be playing on the channel. Tomorrow night, Monday night, we'll be playing a late night session of 7 Citadel, our 8th such session. Those take about 5-6 hours each. Jonathan Warner and I have been mainly playing through those. I'm still loving that game. But soon we're going to be playing something new, and I'd love your help to decide what to play next. I think maybe we've got plenty of more science fiction games, but maybe we would be better off sort of mixing it up now and playing something else, maybe a longer multi-part game. But you let me know. You can stop by the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel or the Discord, both of which there are links on this YouTube page. All right, so let's catch up with the chat. All right, so on the previous letter before the last one, I had a theory about the butcher's daughter who was seen crying, suspiciously emotional about the death of our main victim, Alice. And in the last letter, we got a bunch of clues about that feels like it's putting everything together. So in the last letter, we got some comments about the paint outside the window. This is the one. Oh, what's happening here? Did I not turn on my cameras? Hold on. I think I forgot to turn on my cameras. All right, let's see if that's better. That's embarrassing. All right, the checklists have all gone out the window. I have detailed checklists to remind me everything to do. These days, they're all gone. Just have to hope. In the old days of the channel, when the channel first started, there would be like, okay, it's an hour before the live stream. Let me get set up. Let me do all my checklists, make sure everything's right. Now, 15 minutes before the live stream, let me get in the shower and shave. And I sit down, and in 2 minutes, it goes live. That's how it goes. All right. All right, one little more side comment. I am so grateful that this channel is just a pure joy for me. Being able to play these games with you guys as a hobby. This is my board gaming hobby now. And I am so happy to have wonderful people to share this experience with. I'm so happy that this is not a business. There's no advertisers. There's no worrying about making connections with publishers. It's just you and me. That's the way I like it. Okay. Now, so we got a little more evidence about the window. This is the one part that I don't really understand about this case. The window, the footprints, who jumped in the window, did someone come in the window, etc. And the carpet, there's a section of the carpet that the maid comes in and says there used to be a small little rug there. It's missing. Don't get it. Don't get it. But we finally met up with Mr. Cooper, who we knew took the train and jumped out of town. And they actually interviewed him. He was a bit suspicious. But he does say, like, the reason I showed up at buying my plane ticket all ruffled up and disheveled is because I actually stayed in town after I heard about all this, slept on some grass or something, and then figured I'm done with this town. Sounded suspicious. He asks if they caught a suspect. When he's told yes, he says, I hope he gets locked up, even if he's not guilty. I think more evidence that these guys were all working together to stage this fake robbery, which went wrong. They blamed this guy who was left, the ex-fiancé who was left in the house. I think that makes sense. But what Rob was alluding to is, I guess we're going to read it in the next letter. All right, so let's continue. The son shows up. There's a little bit of suspicion about the son. The dog runs off. The father brings the dog into the room. The dog runs off and disappears. The son shows up with the family lawyer. A little bit suspicious when people start lawyering up. The father is mad at the son for introducing the daughter who died, Alice, to this ex-fiancé who they blame. And the son says, I knew him from the Naval Academy. He would never do this. He would never do this to Alice or anyone. I believe that. I think this was all an accident. He didn't stab her. He is being blamed because he's somehow the cause of this fake robbery going wrong and Alice getting killed. We get a little bit more confirmation about how she died. There was an autopsy. It was confirmed a single downward stab wound to the back of her neck. However, a little bit of surprise, there's some dark fibers in the wound. Now, this seems to go a little bit against my theory that she fell on a shard of this porcelain that went into the back of her neck. That is my working theory, but now we have a slightly different twist. One possibility is that we're told there are these big heavy curtains closing behind the window. So it is possible that someone sort of stabbed downward through the curtains and stabbed Alice, not meaning to kill her, but maybe meaning to cut the curtains. We haven't talked about that before, but that seems at least possible. Or are these dark fibers from this little piece of rug that got removed, and we don't understand the rug? All right, then we get the second letter where we're told about someone hearing odd sounds during their rounds of the William estate. Sounded like frenzied scratching. It was coming from one of the little used outbuildings. And the owner of that property is away, told the butcher, I'm going to be away. So what we think here is happening is, and I get a little bit of credit for this, for spotting this yesterday, is that this is the dog that ran away. The dog that ran away was tracking a scent of the person fleeing the house. And I believe that that person went and fled to the back of this building where the dog from here has tracked him down and is scratching, trying to get into the building where our guy is hiding or where his scent led. And in fact, to double down on that, the property is owned by this Mr. Williams, who's right next door to the butcher, where he's a customer. And the daughter of the butcher, Lucy, who you'll remember we noticed was crying the other day, knew about this property being empty. So we think now Lucy is involved in this pretend robbery. I think that she is likely to be the girl that the person that's been caught in the room who had a ring that said to new love, I think she's likely to be the girlfriend of that guy. The guy who got caught with the ring said, I was going to propose to Alice, the dead girl, to get her back. But I don't think so. I think it was Lucy. And Lucy's been wrapped up in this. We're told a little bit more about the valuation. The new valuation of the necklace is declining in value. Maybe that's why the father was in a rush to have it fake stolen before it declines in value even further. We're told a little bit of about the buying of the ring, why that confirms my early theory, because when the guy who's arrested went to buy the ring, the jeweler said, you're not going to impress Alice with this ring. The father is rich. You need to buy something fancier. And our guy said, no, this is the perfect ring for my girl. And I think it's because he's really giving it to the butcher's girl, not to wasn't for Alice. So I take credit for that. However, the channel gets credit for this part, which was interesting. So we're told a little bit about someone went and bought some grains of arsenic. And we're told it was a man with light-colored hair, pale brown wool cap, flimsy spectacles. So I think this was a little bit of disguise. And the person matches the description of the guy that's been arrested. So I was thinking, okay, he just bought a little bit of arsenic. The person who sold it to him kept it off the books for some extra money so it couldn't be tracked. But the guy who sold it to him says, I realized he wasn't buying enough to kill anyone, so I didn't worry about it. And I thought, okay, was he maybe drugging Alice so that they could steal her necklace? And the channel had a much better theory, a clever theory, which is that they used it to drug the dog, so the dog would not attack any person who jumped in through the window or ran off with the necklace. And we're told in the very first scene how the dog is sort of like laying on the carpet with the victim, hard to get up, won't leave his mistress. But now we think it makes sense that he was drugged. I suspect the father gave the dog the drugs because the father is in on this, but that's neither here nor there. So that's where we are. We still have some unknowns, though, which is whether someone really came in through the window. I mean, we do believe someone did come in through the window now because someone ran away with the necklace. Originally, we thought maybe the necklace is still in the house on the dog's collar. We got distracted by that. But now with the dog chasing the scent, we do believe that someone ran away with the necklace. We still don't understand the barrel or imprint, why there's no marks on the window. But we do think we understand the small boots are further proof that it was Lucy, the butcher's daughter, who actually climbed in. But that's a little bit confusing because then Mr. Cooper may be innocent. So I think maybe Mr. Cooper is going to be totally innocent. The new fiancé may be totally innocent. Let's talk about that for a second. So I was convinced that the new fiancé and the old fiancé were in on this together. And then the new fiancé is very suspicious leaving town. But now that we propose Lucy is the person who left the footprints through the window, it seems overkill to have 3 accomplices in this. And then Mr. Cooper now looks more believable that he was shook up and did just sleep the night off. So maybe Mr. Cooper's not involved in this at all, and the ex-fiancée just described someone that looked like him to throw blame on him. All right, now, Rob says, accidental stabbing while trying to cut the curtain is at least more probable than an accidental vase shard kill. Okay, so maybe, which is a new theory that we've come up with. We were talking about the curtains before, but you could imagine it. We're told that the curtains were in front of the window. So you could imagine that the woman jumped in the window, couldn't get past the curtains, stabbed through and killed our daughter. That's possible, I guess. And Mr. Cooper, the new fiancé, is innocent. I think that's at least possible. All right, let's open up our new letter here. All right, I'm going to pretend to open it. You'll remember I did actually open it to find out which letter I was missing. We'll just go through the motions here for the fun of it. All right, let's see what we've got here. We're told that the father wants to write to us, that we think is fully involved in this. So let's see what the father, I can see, it looks like we're hearing from the father right now. Can't wait to see what this guy tries to pretend happened. All right, 20 November, so a couple days later. Dear Mr. Holmes, my name is Jonathan Hazlewood, and I know you're advising the local police in the matter of my late daughter and the family necklace. My friend, Chief Constable Thomas Baker, has informed me of your interest. Whilst I am not keen on the involvement of amateur detectives, preferring to trust Her Majesty's official constabulary, in this instance, I will reluctantly accept all the help I can receive. I understand you've been told the circumstances of my daughter's death. Still, I feel it's vital to relate to you information of which the police are largely ignorant. This man Johnson attached himself to my daughter some 2 years ago, soon after the death of my beloved wife Annabel. My daughter was distraught at her mother's early death, and she was naturally vulnerable to this odious man's attentions. One of his ways of gaining her affections was to present her with creatures she fancied. First, a small kitten and a stray cat, which the designing boy happily insisted would help with the mice at the old manor. Before the end of that same month, Alice was given the gift of that indolent hound I'm sure you recall from your visit to my home. I'll say it plainly. Johnson knew she loved animals, but that I had always forbade her from keeping any. Thus, he pleased her and upset me, which no doubt gave him pleasure on both fronts. He was quick to propose marriage after that series of gifts, and my dear Alice, well, she was equally quick to accept. I was aghast. I at once objected to the engagement. First, I found the haste indecent. Second, I considered this man wholly unsuitable for Alice. Johnson was a naval officer who had become friends with my son Simon, who is, in case you had not heard, a lieutenant in Her Majesty's Navy. The two of them trained as officers in Dartmouth, but Johnson left the service as soon as he was permitted to do so. As far as anyone can tell, he began to live by his wits, mostly gambling. At the outset, I know he was successful wagering on horse races, but his success only inspired him to take greater risks. He quickly became a regular at any club he could con his way into. I know he was a common sight at Wilfred Wilkins and Brooks, but my Alice would not hear a word against him, and I was forced to concede, lest I lose her affections. With Simon's absence and the loss of my beloved wife Alice was all I had. The only request I made, which she accepted, was that the wedding should not take place for 12 months. My hope was that, with time, her interest in the scoundrel would wane. Fortunately, this proved to be the case. Over those 12 months, Johnson, well, he lost more and more money. And as Alice began to accept her mother's death, she also began to see Johnson's true colors. The final straw was when, during one of his visits, he asked her for £500 to repay an important friend, who Johnson, of course, refused to name. At great risk to our family's reputation, she publicly called off the wedding. Her only concession to Johnson was that, to preserve his honor, she would not reveal his gambling as the reason or publicly blame him for the debacle. He took this act of mercy as an indication that her affections had not truly ceased. Thus began his campaign, for that is the only appropriate word, of letter writing. She would not show them to me, but inform me that they followed a predictable pattern of promises to reform if she took him back. As she repeatedly resisted, the letters became more insistent and then threatening. Despite this, Alice refused to involve the authorities. "What would people think if they found out Henry'd been arrested because of me?" she would say. "I don't want people gossiping about our family." The threatening letters lasted perhaps 2 weeks. Then she informed me that Johnson's writing had started to adopt an apologetic, conciliatory tone. This culminated in his May 14 letter, in which Johnson promised to contact my daughter no more if she agreed to one final meeting. When I failed to convince Alice to decline, I turned to Mr. James Cooper, the young man with whom she had recently become engaged. He, too, was unable to sway her decision. As irony would have it, Alice had met Mr. Cooper in the midst of this nonsense with Johnson, and in spite of initial misgivings, I thoroughly approve of him. The fellow first seemed perhaps too jolly at times, but his wit and respectable profession quickly earned my favor. He was always attentive to Alice, too. Johnson, on the other hand, was attentive to any woman in sight. Too many were the occasions on which I witnessed him leering at our housekeeper, Minnie, or even at the local girls who Alice would tutor. That's going to be the butcher's daughter, Lucy. "I need you to know I'm fully aware of the rumors that follow me as well. It's all the usual drivel one would expect in Godalming, utterly unjust, but prominence naturally draws attention. There's little I can do. You have no doubt also heard something of the family necklace and of its insurance. I can see how my pursuit of it seems cold to the wider community, but I cannot allow myself the luxury of focusing on my late daughter when my living son is very much in need of guidance and support. Though my family has an affinity for extravagances, we are no longer as wealthy as we used to be, and my son Simon's grasp of financial matters leaves much to be desired. My hope for the future of the estate was for Hazlewood's necklace policy to pay out and thus address some of our concerns. However, my policy ultimately won't cover these circumstances. I am in fact considering the sale of Hazlewood Grange, yet I will not allow gossip to worsen the situation. If you have any questions for me that you feel could assist in the resolution of this crime, please ask. Jonathan Hazlewood, Esquire. Well, it's starting to look like maybe the father is innocent. I mean, if the insurance policy is not going to pay out due to theft, Surely he would have investigated that and known it would. Maybe just a coincidence that he was having it recently revalued. Rob says father's innocent too. I was so sure the father was guilty by the way he reacted and the setup, and that the lights were off. I still think the father is maybe more likely than not to be involved, but that letter goes some ways towards convincing me he wasn't involved. I need to rethink all the evidence I had against him. His behavior when he busted in the room, the other reason I thought he was involved was because I figured he had to be the one to shut off the lights. Lucy could have taken care of the lights. I don't think so. We don't really know where the switch is, but we think it's near the entrance. So I don't feel like Lucy could have turned off the lights. It wouldn't make sense really either. Lucy was familiar with the house, is that right? How do you know that? How do we know Lucy, the butcher's daughter, was familiar with the house? She was a student being tutored by the girl. We weren't really, were we told that they tutor in the house? I'm not sure. Also, it would sort of defeat the point. We don't know when the lights went out, but I thought the whole point was that you would turn off the lights as you were before you approach so that no one would see you. In your scenario, she's jumped in the window, not gone into the main part of the house, but still turned out the lights outside. I don't see how that's possible. That doesn't make sense to me, but we can come back to it. Let's see this last final letter from the cop. 20 November, same day that the father wrote us. Dear Mr. Holmes, in my haste to deliver my report in time to accompany the inspectors, I neglected to mention another conversation, which in retrospect I should have considered an interview. I'm not sure if this will be of any relevance, but after informing the inspector, he instructed me to write you immediately and leave nothing out. Following my interview with the chemist Richardson yesterday, I spoke to Mr. Lufton as well, the butcher, of whom I believe you've been told. I wanted to hear his rumors. Mr. Lufton is Godalming's town gossip. Alas, he said he had heard nothing more than I had, though he then grinned and informed me, I do have a claim to fame, though did you know the late Miss Hazlewood had recently become engaged again? I nodded, and he continued, James Cooper's his name. He's been a regular for years, the kind of man who could charm the birds from the trees, if he was of a mind to. I haven't seen him since the day everyone found out about Miss Hazlewood. When I asked about their encounter on the day after the murder, he explained that, Lucy saw him outside looking lost and asked him if he wanted some tea. The boy hardly spoke, but did agree to come inside for some moments. He said he was heading back home and that he'd heard the news. Looked a mess. He was slow to answer when we talked to him. My wife, the saint she is, pestered him to wash up and take a change of clothes from before leaving, which he did. When he came back out to our kitchen, he still looked a mess, rattled, but cleanly shaven. He mumbled an apology for having borrowed a razor for his mustache, took some sips of his tea, and quickly saw himself out. I don't think any of us have seen him since. Since then, boy, that's suspicious. Since then, most of Mr. Lufton's information regarding the Hazlewood case, he told me he was getting from his daughter, who gets to hear plenty when she's out and about delivering orders. She's normally out every day, delivering to someone or another. Good girl she is, but between you and I, she lacks confidence. She can be a little gullible, he added, wrapping my lamb chops in parchment. Apparently, she is somewhat obsessed with marriage, despite her young age, though Mr. Lufton was happy to report she has talked a lot less about the subject recently. To her credit, most people in the town have been diverted from their usual topics of conversation by recent events. He was less happy to report that he had received his first ever customer complaint. One of his other regulars, Mrs. Eastbury, had dropped by to say her order of a ham had not been delivered. When asked, Lucy claimed she had left the wrapped ham at the door when there was no answer to her knock. She could only assume it had been taken by someone after she had left it. Lufton believed her, saying, "You most of all should know how Godalming's been recently." He noted that the station master had been robbed by a pickpocket twice that month, and that some scoundrels have recently taken to scratching lewd messages onto doors around town. Nevertheless, Lucy's carelessness had cost him an extra ham and an unhappy customer. With that last story, Mr. Lufton assured me I was fully informed of Godalming's goings-on. And I left with 2 very fine chops, if I do say so myself. I did happen to run into Mrs. Eastbury this morning, and recalling the butcher's tale, I thought to ask her if she had suffered from any other similar threats lately. She confirmed that the ham she expected from Mr. Lufton had never arrived, then let out a frustrated sigh. "When I went around Lufton's shop asking, his daughter said she had left it at my door that morning. I didn't want to cause any more trouble, so I merely agreed when she suggested someone took it from my doorstep. But in truth, I was home that entire day. Lucy must have forgotten to come by, and Lufton made sure to give me another modest cut of ham free of charge, so I went about my business." Mrs. Eastbury had nothing else to say regarding this, but she did inquire about Alice Hazlewood's dog. Though she is grateful that Mr. Hazlewood gave the cats to her family, she's worried about the Labrador. "I told Mr. Hazlewood's valet we could take Sam in too, but he said the mutt ran off. He swore they were looking for him, but I hardly think that's the case. I saw the poor dog running past the front of my shop last night. I couldn't draw its attention before it was out of sight. Worry Mr. Hazlewood's letting rage cloud his judgment. He hated Miss Alice's first fiancé, who I believe gave her the animals." Mrs. Eastbury then concluded, "I'll admit, Constable, I couldn't believe it when I heard he'd been taken in shackles. Henry's a good man, I've always thought. Mr. Holmes, I hope this information helps you better understand how the Hazlewoods are perceived by those beyond their staff. If there is anything further we can provide, we are at your service. William Brown." Well, we've got mostly confirmation of our theories about Lucy. Lucy is obviously giving this ham to, she probably gave this ham to her boyfriend or whatever, the person hiding out. So that part about Lucy being involved in some malfeasance, how she's not talking about marriage anymore because I think she's engaged to Henry, the person who's been accused. Sorry, this is the second letter. However, there were a couple things in this letter that interrupt our theories. We were sort of coming to the conclusion that Cooper, the new fiancé, is not involved. But boy, the part about him shaving off his mustache seems very suspicious. So those of you, including me, who are starting to think that Cooper was innocent, remember, Henry, the person on scene, describes the person who broke in as a guy with slick back hair and a mustache, which matches Cooper's description. Maybe Lucy used the ham to drug the dog. Boy, that is a good observation. That is a very good observation. I am just blinded to this dog drugging side story, and you guys are on it. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, we already, unfortunately, it doesn't really add anything to our theory, but the biggest dilemma on our hands now is explaining our big problem, our big challenge for this case is figuring out which of the four people are involved. We know that Lucy's involved, the butcher's daughter. We know that Henry, the ex-fiance caught in the room, must be involved for two reasons. One, he's Lucy's boyfriend, so obviously she's doing it. She wouldn't do it on her own, this meek girl who lacks confidence. The other reason is Henry's lie about the ring when he's caught in the room. So those two are clearly involved. And the small boots seem to implicate Lucy. But then the question is, why would Cooper also be involved? And yet, so we were almost ruling him out, but then this new information is really throwing us, because he comes in a mess the next night, which makes sense if he's hiding out in that outbuilding all night and is fleeing town the next morning. But we were starting to think, well, maybe he's telling the truth, as eccentric it sounds. But then here he is, he shows up and he borrows their razor to shave before he gets on the train. That's craziness. Why would he do that? That's so unusual. That's so unusual. Now, if he had just, let's say he had come out of the room and borrowed the razor and shaved off a night of stubble, you might be able to explain it by saying, okay, he's this high-powered lawyer. He normally would go home first overnight, shave, shower, and then go to work. Maybe he has to jump on the train to get to work. He doesn't have time to go home, and he doesn't want to come in looking disheveled. But to shave the mustache? To shave his mustache off? Boy, that's very suspicious. That is very suspicious. But then why do you need two people? Why would James Cooper need to run away with the necklace from the window and Alice? And we really think they were Alice's footprints by the window. Hmm. Then the second piece of our puzzle, then most of it is just confirmation of our own theories about, and there's some red herrings here about local scoundrels. We know the daughter Lucy was going to get married to someone who is going to be Henry. The other piece of this puzzle that's throwing me is the father is doing a reasonably good job of convincing me he's not involved. The father makes a convincing case, and then he says, it turns out, according to him, that the policy to pay out will not cover these circumstances. I mean, that feels like, well, he would have known that if he planned this robbery. So now I'm thinking he's not involved. We don't have hard evidence against the father, just the theory that he would be the one most likely to turn out the lights, and how his behavior was. When he burst into the room, he went right for Henry, and you said, you bastard. Like, how would he know that someone didn't break in and rob it? But I guess it was just his own bias. And as Rob points out, we didn't get any new information about the rug or the indentation in the ground. Does anyone have an alternate theory about why Cooper would shave his mustache? I'd love to hear it. Shannon says, I think it was Lucy and Cooper in it together. And Cooper turned off the lights when leaving. That is a very, it's tempting to believe that it's Cooper and Lucy, but I'm not sure I buy it. But it is an interesting theory. How do you explain the ring that Henry has, the other culprit? ID of the person who got the arsenic. The description matches Henry, the guy found in the house. And Henry has the ring that says to new love. And Lucy clearly wants to get married. So don't you think it's much more likely that Henry is marrying Lucy? I was ready to think Cooper is innocent, but now what is he doing with his mustache? That's just craziness. That's an unfair red herring if it's just a red herring. That's an unreasonable coincidence. Not just shave it off, but he didn't shave it off at home. He's in someone else's house and he goes to wash up and he comes out having shaved it off. That's just not something you would do. That to me suggests that he was involved. So, okay, what if we have Alice, Henry, and Cooper all working together to rob this necklace? That's just weird. That's too many. Why so many? So, what are our unresolved questions? Is the father involved? Is Henry involved? Is Cooper involved? How to explain the tracks with the big indentation? And then, where is the necklace? Is another question. And what happened to Alice that got her killed? Cooper has a very good job. Why would he do this? Cooper is Queen's counsel. It's so true. Why would Cooper do this? Assuming he's telling the truth, Cooper. I suppose no one, he's not even from this town. He could be lying about it all, about being the Queen's, having a good job as a lawyer. Let's read this part about him shaving his mustache again. That's just an unfair coincidence. He hardly spoke. He came inside. He said he was heading back home. He'd heard the news, looked a mess, slow to answer. She pestered him to wash up, take a change of clothes, which he took. He mumbled an apology for borrowing the razor for his mustache. Cleanly shaven. Maybe he didn't shave off his mustache. Maybe this is just very awkwardly phrased or trickily phrased. Maybe he did just trim up and didn't shave it off. It says cleanly shaven. But maybe this is the old-timey reference to mustache. He borrowed a razor for his mustache, but maybe that's just the old-timey speak. There is a little something weird too. Here's the description of Cooper when he's buying the train ticket out of town. He had seen a disheveled Mr. Cooper the morning after the murder. You could tell he hadn't cleaned up proper in some time. Clothes were covered in dirt, hair an oily mess. He buys the paper and he gets a ticket. He was angry, asked about a return ticket. He said, he said it was supposed to be different. More suspicious stuff. So I guess this scene here is after that. He's been a regular for years, the kind of man who could charm the birds off the trees. But I haven't seen him since that day. So this must have been after that. So they also see him outside, looking lost. Asked him if he wanted some tea. The boys hardly spoke. So they must have seen him out after he bought his ticket. He said he was heading back home. He'd heard the news. He looked a mess, and so they give him new clothes. It's easy to frame Henry. He didn't care what the father thought. Getting the animals, the engraving on the ring is odd. Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't know how you could explain the engraving on the ring and have him be being framed. Maybe Johnson asked Cooper to stay hidden and monitor Alice meeting with Henry. Something happened. He ended up stabbing Alice, maybe because it was dark. Cooper did not stab Alice by mistake, I don't think. He's surprised when he hears the news. And he seems genuinely angry at Henry. Here's the interview with Cooper from a previous letter. He tells us what happened. Let's read what he says from a previous letter. I took the train to Guildford, where he arranged to meet the solicitor, Cooper. Okay, so we know he really does have a job. He really is a worker. He is tall, so he probably cannot explain those. He's well coiffed, slick black hair. No mention of a mustache. But maybe this is a reason why he would shave. He admitted to disobeying his fiance's plea. He returned home. Insisted he had a good reason for doing so. He felt uneasy about the whole affair. Had even contemplated hiding near Hazlewood Grange to spy on it, but he walked around town instead, slept the night, heard about it in the morning, decided to return home for a change of clothes, even though he's gotten new clothes from these people. And if he was returning home, he would have shaved then. Why shave at these people's house? Maybe his plan was to go home to change. And then he walked to the train station, heard about the news of the death, rushed to his friend's house, learned the fate, run as far from that damn town as I could, run back home. When they're told they've got Henry in custody, he says Johnson can rot even if he's not guilty. When they ask him about the necklace, he says it's worth a fortune, but he doesn't help much. Hmm. Boy, that's tricky. Can you read a part about the indentation in the ground? Why would Cooper not return to his fiance's home after such a tragedy? That is a great question. It seems like he should return home after the tragedy. Absolutely. It's very odd. It's incredibly odd that he wouldn't return to say what's happened. Here's the description given by Henry. A man, he was spry with jet black hair and a thin mustache. Here he is claiming that the ring was simple ring with two new love, which he claimed was for Alice, but I don't think so. Okay, I'm trying to find the indentation in the grass. Here. So they go look at the footprints and stuff. Search the thing. They find a pair of footprints. Uniform depth could be followed out in two directions from the south-facing parlor window. Followed in two directions. That's a very weird thing. I don't know how you explain it going in two directions. If you follow it to the right, you go down to the grounds and desire to avoid the noise by the gravel. And then the ones to the left turn around to make to a longer return journey. And on their return, the individual took care to keep as far from the house as possible. Halfway between the window and the main road, a large impression in the ground, perhaps the size of a small boulder or a small barrel, with footprints leading up and away from it. A pair of narrow boots, which we think might match Lucy's foot, because not only don't they match, but the maid says Hazlewood has small feet. When they compare, the footprints are 2 inches smaller than his. So these seem like girls' footprints, probably Lucy. You could imagine Lucy was listening in the window and heard Henry try to get back together with the. What if Henry's telling the truth about the ring, was trying to get back together? Lucy overheard it and killed Alice. And then Henry lies to protect Lucy. What if Henry is dating Lucy, tells her he's going to marry her, but really goes back to try to win back this girl, Alice? Lucy follows, brings something to look in the window, hears her boyfriend, Henry, trying to get back together with Alice, jumps in and stabs her, and steals the necklace and runs off. Henry sees her and doesn't want to tell on her, so he makes up a story about a guy who looks like Cooper, and Cooper shaves off his mustache just so he won't get arrested falsely. Could the indentation in the lawn be from the poisoned ham? Doesn't seem so. Something stolen besides the necklace. It's an interesting idea. There was the rug we still don't have an explanation for. Wow, it feels like there's a lot we don't have good explanations for. I think Cooper stabbed Alice through the curtains by mistake. He didn't see it was her. So Cooper is our culprit, lying and shaving his mustache off. And then what's your explanation of Alice's involvement? She could just be sad that her boyfriend's been accused of murder. That's true. We don't really need we don't really need Lucy to be involved other than being sad about her boyfriend. But why are her footprints leading up to the window? If those are her footprints, which they sure seem like they are. Is it possible that the footprints are Lucy's from a different day? That she's just spying on Alice? Or in fact, spying on the meeting between Alice and Cooper? Like, is it possible that those are Lucy's footprints, but they are not there from the murder? Like, we do see this description of a bunch of footprints. A set of footprints, this is very misleading. A set of footprints, uniform depth, could be followed out in two directions. So maybe Alice comes, sneaks up, looks in the window to spy on this girl, and leaves. Why does Henry want... My gut tells me Cooper's not involved in this anymore. I just don't know how to explain the mustache. If Cooper isn't in the outhouse that the dog tracks down, then maybe Lucy stashed the necklace there. Cooper's not involved. Lucy working with Henry. It still feels like the most likely situation is that Henry and Lucy are working together to steal the necklace. Henry is in debt for gambling. He plans to steal the necklace. Maybe he did plan to kill her and frame Cooper. I guess that would be my best theory, that Henry has planned to murder. Why does he have the ring on him? Why would he have the ring on him if this was his plan the whole time? I mean, Lucy is the butcher's daughter, so she would have access to a nice sharp knife. All right, I guess my best theory is that Henry and Lucy plan this robbery of the necklace. Lucy's supposed to climb in the window, steal it, and run off. And Henry's going to claim that he saw the killer. Maybe Henry's going to knock her out, steal the necklace, give it to Alice, give it to Lucy, who's going to run and hide it, and then the two of them are going to go elope. And he's going to blame Cooper or say that the robber looked like Cooper. But the things go wrong, and Alice gets killed, either by a knife through the curtain or by the vase hitting her in the back of the head. And that Cooper's not involved, but that he's shaving off his mustache. Either he didn't shave it off and it was misleadingly written on purpose, or he shaved it off because he knows that Henry's going to try to frame him. And that they've drugged the dog and all that. My gut, Marlene says, my gut tells me Cooper and Lucy are an item. Rob says, I don't think it was a planned murder. It happened by accident. I think, yeah, I agree with that. Marlene says, but Cooper's engaged. Yeah, Cooper's engaged to this rich family, Alice. And he's a lawyer with a good job. So I don't see, I mean, he could be having an affair with Lucy, but the main point is he would have no motive to try to rob the necklace if he really is this solicitor. What about the missing rug? That sure seems like an important clue to what happened. Okay, I got a theory for you. I got a theory. You ready? No dirt on the windowsill from someone who would have climbed up from the outside onto the windowsill. What if they come in the room and Henry takes that little piece of carpet and puts it over the windowsill to let Lucy climb up into the windowsill without leaving marks on the windowsill. But why would he need to do that? Surely part of his story is that someone climbed in the window. So why would he hide that? Never mind. Some of these cases, by the time you get to the end, it seems like it's a cut and dry. You understand everything. Other cases like this one feels like we're never going to be able to figure out. We don't have enough information to figure it all out. Boy, I can't wait to read the solution for this. That will be next week, by the way. We will be reading the solution. Next week, we'll read the solution. Then maybe I'll do an update on New York Noir. And then we're going to start playing a new mail-based case written by Anna. Not, as I previously claimed, a custom improvisational case, but Anna has written a series of letters. If Anna's still here, she can tell us, is there 4 letters or 5 letters? We'll read one each week. Did we follow the marks on the sides of the window frame? I think it was introduced in the last letter. No, we didn't. We don't know how to explain that. It was very ambiguous. We can take a look at it, though. We're told that there are marks in the paint here. Only the southern-facing window was open when I arrived. There appeared to be mild damage to the paint in 2 places on opposite sides of the window frame. Mild damage to the paint in 2 places on opposite sides. So like opposite sides of the frame have a little bit of mild damage. You think something big and heavy, the width of the window frame, was removed? That seems so crazy. How is someone running away with this? You big heavy thing. A short ladder. On the 2 sides of the frame? That's not where a ladder would leave a mark. It would leave a mark on the sill. So strange. What would leave marks on the 2 sides of the window frame? Not on the sill, but on the 2 sides. Mild damage. Boy, that is so weird. And the missing rug? How strange. How strange. Yeah, and they think they're on the ground floor. Someone could have easily just come in. No one says, how did they get up to this window? No sign that the window is high enough above ground that you would need help climbing in. So many confusing pieces to this. Hmm. Hmm. Well, we don't have to solve it today. We do have to solve it before next week, though. So what we're going to do here is we're going to end this session. We will meet again the following Sunday, a week from today, and we'll have our last discussion of any last theories. Get everyone on the record with your best predictions before we read the solution. If you want to talk about it between now and this coming Sunday, you can hop on the Discord. There's a little channel for discussing these cases, or post your thoughts in the comments. No spoilers from people who know the answer, obviously. I'll see you then.